Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Voices of the Vic podcast with me, Mike Duffy, and tonight I am joined by Joe Thomas, and we're here to thankfully discuss a Watford victory. It's been a couple of games since we last tasted victory, a couple of away games, obviously. That being to them lot down the road and then Leeds United on Tuesday. But we were back at the Vic to pick up another 3 points where everything is always rosy at the Vic so far this season. But before we delve into all the action and everything else, like I said, I'm joined by Joe. I did briefly see you yesterday, Joe, but how's things, mate? You all good?
Yeah, good mate, thank you. Yeah, it was nice to see you guys yesterday, even though it was brief.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't get to meet up too much, so yeah, it was good to have a bit of a catch up and chat. Walking back to where we were going, all smiles as you say. Nice to get another win at the Vic.
Yes, absolutely. I wasn't planning to go actually. I entered a competition, Spreadex Sports. I think they're one of Watford's sponsors, and I've won tickets through them before. They often do ticket giveaways, and I thought I'll enter. It's just retweet, fill a form in. I checked again on Thursday because that's when it closed. Didn't hear anything, and I said to the missus, I says, to be honest, it's a 12:30 kickoff, so it's probably just as well that I don't go because it'll be an early start. And then lo and behold, there I was at work on Friday. I checked my emails, and they emailed me, "You've won tickets." So I took the boss and my best mate along down with me. It was his third time at the Vic, and each time that he's been, the team that he's supporting that day has won. He came to the Arsenal game in the relegation season in 2020-21. He's an Arsenal fan, so the team he was supporting that day won. And
Of
then his
course.
last game was the opening day victory, 4-0 against QPR. So he's a
Oh
good
wow.
omen to bring along. So yeah, not the most entertaining game yesterday, but
No, it wasn't, was it?
a win's a win. Let's start at the very beginning, though, Joe, as we always do with the team news. There was one change from the team that narrowly lost at Ellen Road. So I'll just run through the team for those that don't know. Batman in goal, back three of Sierralta, Porteous, and Pollock. Eberselli out on the right, Larucci out on the left. Sissoko and Kayembe in that midfield, two together. And then Ince and Shaq in the 10. And then Barr was the main man leading the line. That one change obviously being Morris coming out and Porteous coming in. A couple of sort of noticeable things in that team. First thing being Backman was still in goal, Joe, bearing in mind Tuesday night's horrors. And there was still no Jebison, and we were a bit confused at the time. I mean, we I don't want to dwell too much on the Leeds game because we had the opportunity to do a podcast. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do one in the end. But obviously, we haven't spoken since then. When he wasn't in the squad against Leeds, we thought, he might just be rested. But it's since come out. Andrew French did an article. I think he spoke to Tom, and Tom said that he's been left out because of his confidence being low. Now, granted, you could have an argument to sort of say, well, is leaving him out going to do his confidence any better? But there was still no Jebison, not even on the bench. It was Doumbia and Bayo were the two striking options on the bench for us yesterday. So, what were your thoughts on the overall team when that team news broke yesterday, Joe?
Well, first of all, like you say, noticeable was the Jefferson not being in the squad. I was standing in the concourse chatting to one of the other fans, and we both said it. I, I put this in the chat in the week, I think, and I said I thought it was poor management from Tom on that front for me. I don't know why he's kind of called him out and come out and making the comments that he is. I find it very strange. It's turning out to be a bit of a joke loan signing at the moment. Like it was all smiles, all positive, all the right things were being said. I mentioned that there was that interview with Jesse Marsh before he came in, and he was saying that they'd had a big chat and that Watford was the right move. He'd spoken to Tom and it fitted his plans and what he wanted to do. Um, I'm just slightly confused, if I'm being completely honest, as to what's going on. Like, if a guy's low on confidence, you kind of put your arm around him and give him support, and you include him in the team. We were saying before that he probably needs a few starts in a row to kind of get that confidence back. If he is low in confidence, doing what he's doing is only, for me, going to damage him. If you ask me, but you know, we'll see what happens, and we'll see whether Tom includes him. Obviously, again, we've got another Saturday, Tuesday situation coming up. We'll see what comes of those games. If Jefferson's not backed by the international break in the team, I can honestly say I think that's. I've just seen the comment there. I was literally just about to say I can see him going back to Bournemouth in January, and it will just be a complete and utter waste. And the worst thing is I can actually see him going somewhere else
and ripping it up
and just scoring loads of goals, and us going, well, what the hell's gone on here? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a baffling one. As for Backman, I was completely surprised that he was starting yesterday, if I'm being honest. I know he made a couple of mistakes the other night. Obviously, we won't go over it too much. I still think Bond deserves that place in goal. I think, as I said before, I don't think he did too much wrong. Backman obviously still being a bit injured from before. There was no reason Bond should have come out. However, obviously he came back in yesterday. He had that one issue, didn't he, in the first 10 minutes of the game, where my friend who I go with, Matt, he said to me yesterday that because of the striker being in front of him and not making the movement till late, Backman wouldn't have known kind of how to set himself for the ball coming in the box. So he kind of did what he could when the ball came in. However, obviously, it just looked bad, didn't it? Because it went into a dangerous area. The guy's 6 yards out. All he's got to do is put it in the goal, and somehow he's literally smashed it off the bar of the post. It was half over, half out, and thankfully we got away with it. Other than that, let's be honest, he didn't really have a lot to do yesterday, did he? I mean, he got himself up. He made the save from the header that went across goal when the ball came back out, but he didn't really do a lot yesterday, did he?
No, absolutely not. And just to go back on the Jefferson thing, firstly, as Jess pointed out, if we carry on the way that we are, don't be surprised to see him go back to Bournemouth. And like you said, Joe, it would be so typical if he went back to Bournemouth, he went somewhere else, got a run of games, and scored a load of goals. Now, I wasn't on the podcast after that unfortunate game down the M1. I still won't. I still can't believe that happened, considering how bad they've been since. But that was brilliant, by the way. I just want to shout that out. Massive, like brilliant scenes at the Coventry Building Society Arena yesterday. But yeah, I listened to the podcast, and Katie made a very good point. All Jefferson needs is a run of games. There's so many people on Twitter that are saying Jefferson's not the answer and all that. And whilst, yes, I sort of understand where they're coming from, at the same time, the lad's not been given a chance. Like, give him a run of games. Like, and I'm not talking start him and then bring him off in the 60th minute. I'm saying give him 90 minutes. Let's see what he can do. If 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many games in a row, and if by, I don't know, game 10, he's still not done anything, then yeah, he'll be in for a bit of criticism. But I just think this is going to be one that maybe bites us on the backside a little bit. So hopefully, as you say, I personally thought Clevs would have maybe put an arm around him and said, look, we'll get through this together. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jefferson. After yesterday, can I see him playing on Saturday or featuring? Probably not, to be honest, and we'll get on to the reasons why a little bit later on. Jess Bishop-Jones has just also said, will Jefferson get FA Cup games, do you think? Because that's all starting soon. I don't know what the clause is. There's so many different contract clauses now on what you can and can't do. The only reason he wasn't allowed to play in the Carabao Cup was he already played for Bournemouth against West Ham. Because I don't know if you remember, but he played that game and everyone was like, I thought he was signing for us, even though it was always going to be the case. He was going to play that game and then join us. So it'll be interesting to see. He might not be here. They might have already foreseen this and thought, no, don't play him in the FA Cup. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was also made. Another point was made to me by another friend yesterday, is that there could actually be something in the clause that the club do not want to mention, that if he plays a certain amount of games, we have to pay an amount of money. Gino might be being tight and being like, well, if we play all these games now, then we're obviously, the money's just going to go up and up and up, and we may not be able to afford it potentially, which is why they're making some piss ass excuse for him being low on confidence rather than just coming out. Well, they don't want to come out and say we haven't got the money to pay for the contract potentially. That is
That
another
happened
reason.
with someone else recently. I can't think for the life of me who it was, but we had someone on loan, and we didn't play him, and the simple reason was that we'd have to pay the parent club X amount. I can't remember who it was now for the life of me, but that definitely happened
Oh,
recently.
there's something going on in court at the moment still with the club. I think it's Zuniga, isn't it?
Oh, it might well be actually,
Because the club, because
yeah,
Napoli, I think Napoli are trying to fight with us that he made 15 appearances, but we're saying he only made 14. But because he played in an under-23 game or something like that, they're classing that as an appearance. But the club's saying it's not an official game, so they're arguing over like 2.9 million euros or something like that, which is just stupid. So
yeah, well, that's Watford for you. But yeah, just to sort of skirt back round to the original question in terms of Bachmann as well, I'll have my say on it. I was absolutely fuming with Bachmann come half time of that Leeds United game, and I said, like I've already mentioned a couple of times already, I wasn't on that post Luton podcast, but if I was, the one thing I would have said was I would have been absolutely raging if I was Jonathan Bonds and the team news comes out and Dan Bachmann's picked instead of me. Because I'm not being funny. We all know what Bachmann's like. We all know he can lose his head, and maybe the big games aren't for him because he's quite erratic and he's quite an emotional character. And yeah, Clevs could argue, well, the emotion is passion, etc., etc. But he does lose his head too quickly. I mean, look at two examples I'll give you straight off the bat, which in two recent games. The Luton scenario where they walked out on the pitch and he said they can't, surely they can't play on this. I mean, I don't want to gloss over that game too much, but that was pathetic. You cannot be saying that. Or if you do, just don't make sure you're not saying it when there's, people are always filming. Whenever you go out on the pitch and the players do their walk around the pitch that they do, there's always a camera rolling. So, and the second thing, I don't know if you saw this, Joe, on Twitter before the Leeds United game, he got caught by one of the sprinklers, and he was absolutely fuming. So some fan that was in the grounds early doors, he obviously, as I just mentioned, the players go out, walk around the pitch, taking the sights, whatever, and a sprinkler come on, and it was directed towards Daniel Bachmann. And he was absolutely, he was not happy at all. And he walked over to the ground staff. And I just thought, brilliant, they've got in his head already. And they bloody well did, because he absolutely dropped
I
two
didn't know
howlers.
that.
So
I didn't know that.
I was on Twitter at half time, and I just said, if I'm Jonathan Bonds, I mean, I don't know if he's put anything on Twitter recently, not Twitter, Instagram, because sometimes he puts a post out. If the team have won, he'll like reshare it on his story or something. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's really, really racked off with Clevs and the Clevs and the coaching staff, because I mean, like you said, I think you actually said it. He's done an adequate job in the games. He's not done amazing, but he's not done horrendous either. He certainly didn't do enough to warrant being dropped, I don't think. And the fact that we brought a keeper in who had been injured for arguably our biggest game of the season, I mean, thankfully it's in the past now, and we can sort of look forward a bit. But I wasn't happy with Bachmann, and the fact that he played again. The thing is, I don't think Clevs would have dropped him. I mean, I knew I knew he wasn't going to drop him, because I think they still sort of see him as like a leader that sort of leader model and
Well, he's
like
fully
captain.
backing him. He's fully
Yeah,
backing him, isn't he? And
yeah,
that's the crazy thing when you talk about Jefferson. Jefferson's been told he's low on confidence. We don't know what. I'm not saying they're not offering him support, but you would expect them to come out and offer words of encouragement and say, "Look, we're doing this behind the scenes. We want to get him back. We're offering him all this support." It's not really been kind of said. It's kind of muted at the moment. But on the other side of it, they're fully coming out and supporting Daniel Backman. He's saying, "I mean, he's my number one when he's fit. He's the man who's going to start." He's made a mistake, but he's come out, he's owned it. We support him and we want him to remain in the team. So you've kind of got one and like just complete different sides of the coin, haven't you? It's crazy.
absolutely. And Backman, he's a confidence player. When the world's against him, my God, don't you know it? Because he'll drop howler after howler. And this is what's frustrating, I think, for a lot of people, is on his day, he is the best shot stopper in the division. I don't think anyone can argue that. So I mean, Jess just said here. Tom said he thinks Backman is the best keeper in the league. I've booked Tom an appointment at Specsavers, but all round goal, no, he's not. He's not any good. But shot stopping wise, on his day, yeah, brilliant. So I wasn't overly pleased to see Backman play. I felt a little bit for Morris. I always think he puts a shift in, and he's a good option to have in that back three and that left-sided centre back as well. Uh, Granted, he's not an out-and-out left centre back; he's more a left back. But we've got better options on that left wing back now, thankfully. But I mean, Porteous we know can be rash, but at the same time, he's getting better. I think the more games he plays under Cleverley's guidance. But as you rightly pointed out, Joe, I mean, the start of the match, I think Blackburn definitely sort of dominated proceedings. That sort of first initial 10, 15 minutes. I mean, I think you were sat in the Graham Taylor as well, wasn't you?
No,
Um,
I was in the rookery. I was behind the goal, up towards near where Katie usually sits when she goes.
Yeah, I was in the Graham Taylor and the Lowland Graham Taylor. I was actually sat directly behind Marvin Sordell and his lad. So I had a little chat with him after the game, and he seems a nice enough chap. But yeah, I was on that Lowland Graham Taylor in that corner where the 1881 is, that sort of side, and they absolutely peppered our wing back. I mean, Larucci was getting doubled up on, and
Yeah,
they were absolutely peppering him, and they were finding a lot of space. And like I say, they dominated the sort of first 10, 15 minutes. And Backman was called into action early, as you've already pointed out. Hawkeye shows it was quite close as well. I mean, obviously, we don't get to see that straight away because we're in the ground. And that's one thing I think they should probably do. If it ever goes to Hawkeye, maybe stick it up on the big screen just so it, out of interest for anyone that wants to see how close it was. But I can't help but think now the fact that you've just pointed out that you had a chat with your mate and he made a very good point there. But I can't help but think that could he have done a little bit better there, because that follow-up save where he's parried it, he was very lucky that Larucci was able to actually clear it in the end, because for me, he doesn't need to parry that. It was more I can't remember the
theatrical.
chap who had the shot, but it was more placement over power, and Backman just sort of leaped, and he's obviously thought, I know what I'll do. I'll try and make this save look better than it is, sort of get a bit of credit in the bank. But I just think he could have done a lot better with that. And luckily for us, he did enough to stop it going in the back of the net, which is ultimately what we want him to do. But yeah, a bit of a shaky start for us, and not a great sign considering how Tuesday night went, Joe.
No, not at all. Batman did also get up and apologise. Whether it was a mistake
Mm.
or not, he did actually get up and he put his hand up to the rookery and said, "Look, I'm sorry." So, I think he kind of recognised whether or wasn't a mistake. He's apologised for it. Like you say, the follow up save for me wasn't needed. I don't think he needed to make the parry out wide. Obviously, we got lucky with that, and yeah, it wasn't a good start. We didn't settle. Thankfully, we didn't concede early again. But I don't know what it is with us, but we just don't seem to look comfortable in the first 10 minutes of games, and it's still a concern. Like whether we're home or away, like we need to. All right, obviously, it's great. The game was won yesterday, and we grew into the game, and obviously it wasn't a super game overall, was it? It wasn't one that we were going, oh my goodness, we played unbelievably well, and thankfully we got that goal because we had so many chances, because it wasn't the case yesterday. It was one which was pretty ugly, and if I remember rightly, I think Blackburn won sort of a similar sort of
They
game at
did
Vicarage Road last year where we
smash and grab.
yeah, exactly. So, they seem to be those sort of games with Blackburn. There's never sort of anyone who kind of really turns up and plays well. But yeah, I do for me think that we still need to address that situation with us in the first 10, 15 minutes of games.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think a lot of us in the stadium were perhaps thinking, here we go again. But I always think there is that little bit more element of confidence when we're at the Vic, because Clevs, he's not lost since March, I think it is. That last loss that we tasted at the Vic was against Coventry, I think, in what was Valerian Ismail's last game, because there was all that stuff with Dean Austin's text being leaked and all that. And
Yeah.
but I mean, Klebs has done a remarkable job, and he really, really has done well with the team at the Vic. But yeah, not a great start, and I think after that sort of 10-15 minute spell, I think the game, I know we're here to talk about the game in full and whatnot, but to be honest, there really wasn't much to report. I think both teams were very, very poor yesterday. And going into the game, I often look at, the form table, etc. We've got I think there's us and 3 or 2 others that have got the same home record this season, and we're joint top for home record. Blackburn are also picked up 16 points at home this season. We've got 19 points altogether. 16 of those have come at home. Obviously, only the one win away from home being the opening day against Millwall. And, Blackburn are a very strong team at home. But weirdly enough, Blackburn's away records, they've picked up the same amount of points as us away from home. So, it's almost like a carbon copy of Watford, which is a bit odd. So I think, I don't know whether we just cancelled each other out, but I just think, like you said, yesterday was very much a case of one of those games where you'll look back on it and you'll think, yeah, that was one that we sort of grinded out, and we're just happy to take the 3 points and move on to the next game. But if you can come out victorious in games like that, that shows real sort of character within the team, and that's good to see that we've still got that. Considering it's been a tough couple of weeks for the club in terms of form. And one thing I must mention as well, actually, which I forgot about, was the banner for Tom in the Rookery. You were obviously sat in the Rookery, so you wouldn't have seen it firsthand. But
I did. I was actually in the lower GT because I wanted to get a photo of it
okay.
So
Brilliant.
you'll see, I posted on my Instagram. That was actually a
Yeah.
photo I took from being in the lower GT. So I kind of was there and then moved around and went into the
There
Rookery.
you
So
go. I mean, that I thought that was a nice touch. The fact that it showed that us fans are still with Tom, because let's be honest, if it was any other manager, considering the sort of up and down form this season, they probably would have been on thinner ice. And who knows, maybe Tom is on thin ice. I don't know what's been said behind the scenes, but you would have expected that announcement to have come, if it was anybody else. So the fact that Roy Moore and the guys at the 1881 have done that. I can't remember the chap's name now. MGW Designs, is it? Oh, is it Thomas? Sonny Thomas Designs.
is
He's
it
the
the
one.
is it TWD designs or something like that?
Yeah, that's the chap. He designed it, and then Roy got
Yeah,
it.
he's brilliant.
Printed
Yeah.
out. Yeah, very, very good. Jess said that got that banner out quick while before he gets sacked. Hopefully that isn't the case. But yeah, like I was saying, it was a bit of a drab game, to be honest. And my mate Dan pointed it out to me. I think it was a bit of a weird one, and we've sort of flagged this up on various podcasts already. I think the big problem was, and it was for both teams, that the midfield just didn't get a look in that game. Like both midfields were bypassed. There was a time in the first half, I think it was, can't remember what minute we were in, and Porteous had to play a long ball, and when the ball was out, he was shouting over to the bench, and he put his hands up to indicate 10, and he was pointing in the middle of the pitch, like to the bench, as if to say, where's my midfield? Like, where's my number 10 that needs to drop and have someone run off him? Like, where are they? Because he's having to bypass it every time. And I think yesterday we saw a couple of times that sort of type of football that we saw under Valerian Iswell, which was sort of not great come the end of his spell, whereby we'd get the ball and we'd go backwards. And it's so frustrating. But they didn't really have a choice. It was either go backwards or go long. But at the same time, Blackburn could have really pressured us there. I really don't think they did. And it was a game where both midfields were just missing. But is that a worry for you, Joe? Because over the past few weeks, we've talked about Sissoko, maybe his declining performances, maybe he's showing his age a bit with the physicality of the league. But again, not another game where Sissoko's come out smelling of roses, because I'm not saying he dropped an absolute stinker, but he certainly hasn't been up to scratch these last few weeks. And for me, he needs a rest now.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't think he was great yesterday. I thought at times he looked quite poor. Um, he looked, he just looks off the pace. For being completely honest, he just looks off the pace at the moment. Whether he's, there's other people that have been carrying injuries and now suffering and out for a little while. Obviously, Tom Delibashiru, we know he's been injured over the last few weeks and carrying injuries. Ogbonna's obviously out now after he was apparently carrying an injury in that Luton game, so he's obviously out now for a longer period. So there's been a few injuries knocking around the team. One of the things that obviously for me that I knew would be a concern was that Kayembe started that game, but started it alongside Sissoko. But because he's been playing in that number 10 role, he just wanted to get forward, and he was wanting to be in that forward position and not where Tom Delibashiru plays, and play out from the back and then use Tom Delibashiru to then drive forward, which made it a real problem for us because there was no real midfield dominance yesterday. Whether the plan was that Tom Ince would drop back in and play in that position, obviously I don't really know, but it didn't really work. And obviously the thing for me, and I still can't understand why he's not been given a chance, is while Loser was sat there and Loser didn't come on, and he didn't even bring him on as a substitute either. I mean, obviously, as it turned out, the subs worked and things actually worked out for the best yesterday. Obviously, he changed the formation, went to a 4-4-2, didn't it, when he made all the subs in the end, and he'd made all the changes that he wanted. But I would have brought on Imran Loser. I'd have even started him yesterday. Like I say, I don't know why. I kind of suspect. I thought he might have started with when we heard in the team news that Tom Delibashiru would be missing again this week. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing that, because, and I know you'll hopefully think the same, is that Loser can take a set piece, like whether it's a free kick, an in-swinging free kick, or a corner. And yesterday, every corner, my goodness me, Georgie could not get the ball over the first man. I mean, I love Georgie Chadvikatsi like more than genuinely I love the man. However, yesterday I found him so irritating. He was holding on to the ball for too long. He was not releasing the ball in the right at the right times. There was a you wouldn't have seen it because you were over the other side, but there was a break in the second half down my side, and Larouci was driving forward and Georgie was with him. And there was I can't remember who the guy was playing at right back for Blackburn yesterday, but he was kind of running with Larouci, and all Georgie needed to do was kind of run behind and make that run, and so that we could go forward. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't know what happened there. So he could release the ball. However, because he just was keeping alongside Yasser Larouci, he kind of stopped, and then he realised that he had to go back, and it kind of stopped the break and the attack, and it was so frustrating because had Georgie just gone forward, it would have given us a good chance, and he could have brought the ball into the box, and who knows what might have happened. But that happened a few times yesterday where players just didn't see the overlap and just go round the defenders so that we could play that through pass. It wasn't happening.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I'll respond to the Sissoko loser, etc. A name I thought you were going to mention, who I would also quite like to see, and Jess has popped the comment in as well, is Duomo. Like, what's he got to do to get the game?
Yeah.
It was only a matter of weeks ago where Clevs was sort of put his hands up and said, look, I've said previously he's more one for the future, but having seen him in training now, he's definitely ready. And we've not really seen him. And these are the games and these are the times where you see him. The Championship, Clevs is not that naive to know that the Championship is a long, ruthless league. And, a 35-year-old Sissoko, I think he is now, he's not going to be, at tip-top condition playing Saturday, Tuesday. And, loser, yeah, you make a valid point there. He would have done really well yesterday, and that would have maybe suited him a little bit more, having time on the ball. Because, like I say, even Blackburn's midfield wasn't up to scratch. I know they had Todd Cantwell in there, and he didn't really get much of a sniff in, which, to be honest, it's probably poorer on his part, considering our midfield was sort of, we didn't really play through it. So, loser, that would have been the perfect game for him to come back. And I think loser just needs that sort of game to come in, do really well, and then he could, never know, he could cement his place again, because we know that he possesses that quality, but it's getting it out of him, which is the problem. And then Georgie, we're ticking off the. I've got a list of notes here.
Sorry, I've kind of gone.
No, it's brilliant. We're ticking it off like it's a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here at Voice to the Vic, but it's going smoothly. So thank you, Joe. But I put here Georgie to brush up on decision making ? Because absolutely, there were time after time yesterday where, and this is what the game was lacking. We'd get the ball and we hit them on the break. And Georgie does that thing where he just picks up the ball. No one can get it off him. He runs past 1, 2, 3. And you're thinking, right, there's your trigger. You go past the third man. There's your trigger. Edge of the box, you shoot. Or you play someone in. He's always does one thing too much, or he keeps on the ball for too long and he gets dispossessed. And I don't know if this is the chance that you were just talking about, but there was a chance in that second half. We were already 1-0 up. I'm jumping the gun a bit here. We were already 1-0 up. Obviously, everyone's nervy because we scored in the 71st minute, so we've still got 20 minutes to hang on. And Watford are Watford, and we don't really do clean sheets recently. So everyone's a bit sort of jittery in the stadium. We win the ball, funnily enough, we win the ball in midfield, I think it was. And I can't remember who won it, but they played it to Georgie, and he had Sema on the left, and he had Bar over on the right-hand side. And again, it was one of them where, obviously, I was in the lower Graham Taylor, and I was, in line with where Bar was making his runs. And all he needed to do was slip Bar in a split second, or even putting him in full stop. And what did he do? He goes to the left-hand side and he delays it, and nothing comes of it. I think, actually, that was a Vata that he played in on the left-hand side. And Vata had tried his hardest to make something of it. Fair play to the lad. But for me, wrong decision, because that gap on the left-hand side to Vata was too tight. Whereas all he had to do, we know what Georgie's capable of. He just plays a little pass through on that right-hand side, and Bar does what Bar does every week when he's moved out to that wide position. He skins his man, he cuts it across, or he has a shot on goal himself. So for me, that is very frustrating from Georgie. And I was going to save this till just the end of the podcast, when I was just going to round up with a little bit of Watford news. But seeming as though we're talking about it now, I might as well mention it. I'm taking this story with a bit of a pinch of salt because it's the Sun that are reporting it. But Wolves are reportedly interested in Chakvedadze, and scouts were allegedly at the Leeds game to watch him. And apparently they've made him a priority target in a deal which would be worth 20 million. Now, if they come knocking, bearing in mind, let's base it right now, Joe. If Wolves come knocking in January, 20 million, are you taking it or are you not taking it? And when I say not taking it, I'm of the assumption there that you're waiting for maybe the summer and hoping that you can get more for him, or are you just thinking, no, sorry, we can keep hold of him for even longer? What's your thoughts on Shaq to Wolves for 20 million?
I would be very, very shocked if the Pozzo's done business like that in January.
Mm-hmm.
Is just the short answer, I think, for that. I don't think there's any would we want him to go? Would we want him to stay? Obviously, we'd all love him to stay. I certainly don't want him to go, but I think the Pozzos would be very, very silly to do business in January when, especially for a club like us with a player like that, is
Mm-hmm.
that we know that we wouldn't be able to get, unless they're looking now and they've got someone where they can just go, I don't know, where we is half as good and they've got, I don't know, 5 million quid of it, when they'll go, we'll go and spend the 5 million quid, and it's all done and things behind the scene are being done. If it's not, then yeah, I would keep Jack until the summer, and then I would just do business in the summer, because we said this at the beginning of this season, that I expect him to have this season with us and then him leave next summer. So I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be shocked if he went next summer because of how good he is. We know how brilliant he is, and at a Premier League club, he would probably be a whole lot better. Listen, we don't for 1 minute think we're going to get promoted. I still don't think we're going to get promoted. Where we are in the table potentially is a little bit false at the moment and won't remain until the end of the season. But if Watford were to go up and be in the Premier League next season, obviously I think he would then stay. I think he'd have at least a season with us if we did go up. But yeah, I've never known. We know with people in the past like João Pedro. Did João Pedro didn't go in January, did he? He went in the summer, didn't he?
He went in the summer, yeah.
Yeah, obviously Sarr. There was a lot of rumours. We had like 2 winter windows, didn't we, with rumours of Sarr going, and the club turned it down. So yeah, for me, he's going to stay. I want him to stay, and I actually don't think Wolves would be the right move for him anyway.
No, neither do I, to be honest. And I actually quite like Gary O'Neill as a coach. I mean, Wolves, not too fond of them. I know a couple of Wolves fans, and obviously there was that horrific incident back in the promotion season where
Yeah,
that Nick Cruz, I think the chap's name, that will never sit right with any Watford fans, obviously.
no,
So, yeah, I probably wouldn't. I'd be very surprised if we were to sell him in January, because I genuinely think that Tom and therefore the Pozzos think that, promotion is a goer this season, or at least playoffs. I'm not saying that. I just genuinely think that Tom and Co believe that is the case. And if the Pozzos have any sort of inkling or sort of sniffing around that, then they'll be like, no, we'll keep our best players. So the only thing that plays in the back of my mind, which does worry me a little bit, and we've seen with 2 players in recent weeks, is the signing of a new long contract. We saw it with Pedro, signed a new contract, then got sold. Can't remember. I don't think Sarr did it, if memory serves me correctly, but Pedro was the most recent one, signed a new 5-year deal or whatever it was, and then was sold. Obviously, Chak signed a new deal a few months ago, and then Barr signed a new deal the other week. So it does make me wonder, have they, yes, they've extended his contract, but have they put a little thing in small print there saying if a club comes in and offers X amount, you can go. That's the only thing that worries me. But I think even by the Pozzos measures, it would be very, very naive of the club to sell him in January. So if you're watching right now, if you're rewatching this as a video and not live, let us know in the comments if you would take 20 million for Chakvedadze in the January transfer window. And just want to shout out those that are watching right now. The numbers are brilliant. Thank you very, very much. It's we've not really done a great deal of content since the international break. For one reason or another, everything's sort of been a bit up in the air and whatnot. So we do apologise about that. But normal service will be resumed. Jess Bishop says she thought she was chatting to Duomo in Norwich, but it was his brother / agent. Better look the right tit. Not as stupid as I looked, Jess, because me and Cam went to Sheffield United, and he was stood right behind the goal, and Cam said to me, "There's Duomo." I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, it is." And he was stood next to a bloke who was in fancy dressed as a duck. And then I think one of the other lads had his top off, bearing in mind it was September, freezing cold day. And me and Cam were like, what impression is this giving Duomo to the English League? And I put it on Twitter, and it turns out it was his brother. I didn't know it was his agent, though, but every game I've been to since, I've seen Duomo's brother, because they are the spit of each other. So, yeah, you're not the only one. And I think Jess also said, sell Backman to Wolves for a tenner. We should have cashed in when Man United were come knocking. But yeah, Georgie, I love him, but needs to brush up on that sort of decision making. And hey, look, that might be why he's plying his trade at a club like Watford at the moment, because he's still not the finished article. But if he's not, then boy, have we got one hell of a player on our hands. I just want to quickly round up on a couple of other players, Joe. Kayembe, much better in that centre midfield role. And when I say centre midfield, I mean further back as opposed to the 10. For me, I think he looks more comfortable there as opposed to having that extra responsibility of being a 10, even though his ball striking ability is the best at the club. What did you make of Kayembe? Obviously scored the goal as well. But yeah, what did you make of Kayembe's performance overall yesterday?
Yeah, like I kind of just mentioned a little bit earlier, is that he did, while he was better in that position in central midfield, he did drift out of position quite a bit, I thought. But I guess that's because of the position that he has been playing. You as we've said with other players in the past, if you get told to play a certain position, you're suited to playing in that position, then you're asked to do a different position the next week. In your mind, you're going to think, oh, well, I should be there, and just kind of drift in and out a little bit. But overall, I think he did well yesterday. Obviously, I was a little bit nervous when he stepped up with the penalty. That was a bit of a weird situation. I know Cam said, because there was the comment that was made about someone didn't fancy it. I actually don't think that was Bar, because Bar was actually all the way over the other side of what the conversations were that were going on at the time with the ball. So I don't think Bar was the person potentially that didn't fancy taking the penalty, because he wasn't in that group having the conversation at the time, unless people were taking it that he was so far back because he didn't want to be included in it. But yeah, I do think that conversation does need to be had, so that there isn't that kind of uncertainty around who's taking penalties. Obviously,
Well,
when
sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, obviously at Bristol City, when we did get that rare penalty, Tom Bashiru did say, didn't he, that it had been discussed and that he was going to be the man taking pens moving forward. And then obviously we got the one at Sunderland, and he was still on penalties, which was nice to see that that was decided. But obviously with him not being in the side yesterday, I don't know. I mean, obviously we scored it. I'm glad we scored it. But for me, I don't know how you feel on this, but I believe that a penalty taker should be a striker for me, like, or someone who is yeah. I just, for me, like, you just be wanting your centre forwards to be taking the penalty, and especially, well, look, we needed to score, and obviously I know Kayembe scored a few goals, but Bayer was on the pitch yesterday, wasn't he, when that penalty was won? He actually, I think he actually was involved in the penalty being given.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of surprised that with him not getting any goals under his belt, that he's probably the person for me that actually said I don't fancy it.
Well,
In
that's
my
exactly what I was going to say, to be honest. And when the penalty was given and nobody knew who was taking it, I mean, firstly, it would have been Tom Delly if he was fit. And then Ben straight away said to me, he thinks that Ince would have took it, but Ince had been substituted by them because 56 minutes in, the only sub was Ince out and then Bio in. For me, though, I just want to make a couple of other points. I completely agree with what you've just literally said. I think the player who Andrew French has sort of said didn't, quote unquote, didn't fancy it. For me, I think that was Bio. And I'm not surprised. His confidence is probably on the absolute floor. It weren't long ago we were talking about the fact that in a game he'd made one successful pass, and that was when we took kick-off again after the opposition scored. So his confidence is probably on the floor. Clevs has resorted to playing a guy who's not a number 9 instead of Bio. So absolutely, I'm not surprised that Bio. I'm not saying that I know that it was Bio, but if I was pushed for an answer, I'd probably say it was Bio. Just to go on your thing about you wanting sort of strikers to take it, and James has actually jumped in straight before I was going to say it. For me, Kayembe's ball striking is the best at the club. And for me, that warrants straight away him being the man to take it. And when the penalty was took, and well, in the lead up, like when we didn't know who was going to take it, I sort of turned to Ben and Dan and said, I think Kayembe needs to take it. He's the best ball striking player we got. And it looked like at one stage it was, I can't remember who had the ball walking. I think it was Sissoko had the ball walking towards, and I thought, oh, okay, Sissoko's taking it. Then he gave the ball to Kayembe, obviously, and yeah, I mean, you only have to look at some of the greats that have played the beautiful game that is football, and their penalty takers were midfielders. I know, obviously, I'm about to.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not
there's been a few. There has
like
been a
Steven
few.
Gerrard, for example, in midfielder. I'm sure he was Liverpool's penalty taker for years. Frank Lampard at Chelsea, probably. I know they had a plethora of talent at the time, but
Well,
I,
Neil Cox used to be our penalty taker back in the day, didn't he?
yeah,
He
there you
was
go.
he was a centre half. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, listen, it's just more of a preference thing. Like
yeah.
especially when you've got people that aren't scoring. That was more the point. Is that you see at other clubs. I mean, obviously they're better in their Premier League clubs, but you see a player that's potentially low on confidence in Premier League football. A player that's doing well will, if the team's winning, will just go. Obviously, we were at 0-0 yesterday, so it's a bit of a different situation. But you see the ball handed to a striker just to give them that bit of confidence to try and kickstart their season
Mhm.
and try and give them that confidence, then kick on. But like you say, for whatever reason, I do believe it probably was him, and he probably just didn't want any more pelters, did he? But
Yeah, well, we'll talk about him in a very, very short moment because you mentioned there about Kayembe was sort of caught drifting out wide a little bit. And talking of being more effective out wide, I think for me, Barr is more effective out wide. For me, in that sort of first half, didn't really do much. You could tell he was trying to hustle and bustle his way through the Blackburn defence. I mean, the referee wasn't great yesterday. He missed a couple. So, but I think it's clear to me and to every other Watford fan that Barr just isn't a number 9. I mean, look at his goal against Leeds. It come from him marauding down that side, didn't it? And bullying the defence. And every time after he was moved, you mentioned it, 66 minutes on the clock, we saw Larucci and Pollock come off and Semmer and Vata come on, which saw the formation change. And that pushed Barr sort of more out wide. And we saw him sort of come into his own, sort of from the 66th minute onwards. And that poor left back for Blackburn, he looked only a young lad. Don't know who it was. he, he's probably still having nightmares now. He couldn't
yeah,
handle him, and you can't. And the penalty come from Barr doing his thing down the side, cutting across. And you were right, Bio got some sort of a flick on. He tried to bring it down, and then it hit their guy's arm. So, yeah, for me, Bar much more effective out wide, and that's where I want to see him going forward. I assume you're of the same opinion, Joe.
Yeah, 100%. I thought as soon as that change was made yesterday and he went out wide, he was more effective and he'd done a lot more than he did when he was going down the middle. It just doesn't work for me in playing in that position. And I hope that he doesn't continue to persist with that, because I think that's taken away a real quality that we've got in the side if we've been playing out on that side. Yeah, I really hope that he either. But the problem we've got is that if he does do that and he puts Bar down the middle, obviously we know what the rest of the formation is going to be. But there's that uncertainty about we've either got Jefferson or Bio. No one's seen Jefferson for a couple of weeks now, a few weeks. So we don't know what's going on with him. So the other obvious one is that we start with Bio every week. So
that segues beautifully into the next bit. For me, yesterday, Joe, Bar was better when he not Bar, sorry, Bio was better, and Jess has put it here. Bio turned into prime Bio yesterday when he came on, and for me, that would have. He's another one, a confidence player. That would have done his confidence a world of good. In had something to do with the penalty being given. That audacious flick on the halfway line.
Bergkamp flick, Cruyff turns. I mean, it was.
Mate, Watford tweeted that clip and said Bergkamp wears Bio pajamas to bed each night, and that is fucking brilliant tweet. Quality tweet. That's the meme that you need to reply to that. But yeah, Bio was really good yesterday, and that's what we want to see from him, and that's why he's still got people that sort of, don't get me wrong, let's not skirt around the fact he does not score enough goals for a striker. Simple as. And there are a lot of people that are pissed off with him, and rightly so. But he's going the right way about redeeming himself if he's putting performances like that in. But he's got to do it from the get-go. So if he gets a start on Saturday at Sheffield Wednesday, he has to do that from the beginning. It's all well and good coming off the bench and doing it. You have to be consistent. So much better yesterday. Did you think he was better yesterday?
Yeah, I actually did comment to my friend. I said to him, I said he has been a lot better coming off the bench. And it was a much better performance. And obviously, as soon when we saw the flick, we were both like, "What?" But yeah, he was a lot more involved. There was obviously a couple of other penalty shouts as well that he was also involved in. They weren't penalties, however. One of them, another one was for handball, but it actually was him that handballed it as opposed to the Blackburn defender. But yeah, overall, I was really impressed with him yesterday. I thought he was a lot more effective coming off the bench than he has been starting over the last few weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see what Tom does, because obviously he'll look at that and go, well, do I just bring Jefferson back in if he is going to bring him back in and start him, and then bring Bio on, and Bio's like a last half hour sort of player for a couple of games, and just see how that works and see if we can, bring up and build up confidence that way, or whether he brings Bio in and we go that way. It's also worth pointing out, actually, sorry, we're also we're talking about Jefferson and Bio. We've also got Dumbia as well, who's actually been in the squad for the last couple of games and did actually come on at Leeds, didn't he? So, so it's also worth pointing out we've actually got someone really good and quality. Like I was fortunate enough to see him at the MK Dons game in the League Cup, and he was phenomenal that night. So he's definitely a player that I can see featuring a little bit more in hopefully the not too distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, Tom's got one hell of a job picking the side on Saturday now after the a few individual performances. I had to agree sort of recently where Tom said Bio makes us more structured when he's up front, and I had to agree. I know he doesn't score the goals he should, but he does makes us more structured, and a lot more so than Bar does up front, because Bar just naturally wants to drift out wide, and that's all well and good, but you almost get to a point where a couple of times yesterday he'd done it, and he went to cut it across in the box, and it's like, well, you're the one that's meant to be in the box receiving the cut across. So yeah, and also talking about people being given more minutes and everything else. Rocco Vata was actually given 25 minutes yesterday, 25, 30 minutes. He's going to be one hell of a player because my word, it just shows what he can do when he's given more minutes. And he was electric, wasn't he? He just did not stop running.
No,
Hit the side
lively.
netting, and he was giving their defence absolute hell.
Yeah, he was very lively when he came on, wasn't he? There was a few times in the corner, obviously over my side, where he was wanting to really get stuck in yesterday. He won the ball back a couple of times. I think it was one occasion where he lost the ball, but hats off to him. He didn't give up. He didn't, drop his shoulders and have a strop that he'd lost the ball. He tried to win it back, and all you want is your players to give 100%, and he was doing that yesterday. So I can't fault him, and I can't fault him for his efforts yesterday. I hope Tom gives him some more minutes because if he comes on and puts in shifts like that, then we're certainly going to have one hell of a player, and he'll get better as the season goes on with more minutes.
Absolutely, I'd be tempted to stick him in there on Saturday instead of Tom Ince in that 10 role next to Georgie, because I thought Ince had a really good game against Leeds, but I mean he didn't drop a howler or anything yesterday, but he just
no,
wasn't
just
really
non-existent, wasn't he? A little bit,
basically. So I'd be tempted to throw Vata in because he really, really did look lively, and I think the more game time he gets, the better he's going to get. So yeah, really, really, I really wanted one of them to drop in the back of the net for him, because I think Vata's one of them players where when that first goal goes in, confidence will flow and he'll add a couple more to his game. So another player who I thought was sort of back to his best. I do actually owe Vata an apology, because after the Luton game in our group chat, I wasn't very happy with him, and I maybe dug him out, which was a bit harsh. So I owe Vata an apology, and he was much better yesterday. His his cameo was much better yesterday, but that's what happens when you give players like that more minutes and throwing him on sort of last 5-10 minutes. So yeah,
I think the game suited him, as I've pointed out in the podcast last week. Like the fans can't expect, when we're in positions like you just have to look at how games are going. Sheffield United, we threw players on. The players that came on weren't going to influence the result for me because of how the rest of the team was playing. The same given for Luton. Like the game wasn't going our way. We weren't the players like he brought on and he tried to go for it. He tried, but they weren't going to come on and make a huge difference to the game. Yesterday, the game was on a knife edge. The players that we had on the bench that he decided to bring on, I did believe at the time, with a little bit more energy and a bit more pace up front, we could have done something. And obviously we got the rewards for just keeping going. Whereas, like I say, in those games that I just mentioned, it weren't really kind of working for us. So yeah, I listen, I think with some of these youngsters that we've got at the club, if they're brought in the right way and they're played when the time's right, we could have a really exciting team, like a really, really exciting team.
out a couple of times as well in sort of pre-season and whatnot. So, which is good. Watford used to be a team where we were known for sort of bringing through the youth players and giving them an opportunity, and we've had some players come through, that pathway from the youth team to the first team and go on to make some, decent careers. So hopefully that will be the case again with a few of the players that we've got in the squad. So someone who I thought was back to his best yesterday, just very quickly, I want to round up on a few players. So I'm a bit wary of the time. I think I spoke too much about the team at the start, so apologies if anyone's listening back, I should say. Sierralta, I thought was back to his best yesterday. He's another one. I sort of dug him out in pre-season, saying his legs look like they've gone. He doesn't look like the player he was from lockdown season, when essentially that was when he really was at his best. But I thought he did well yesterday, Joe. You agree?
Yeah, I was really impressed with him yesterday. He didn't really need to do a lot to stand out, but he did enough to, just know that he was there, that his presence was known, and it was good to have someone commanding and strong back in that position. And yeah, he didn't put a foot wrong for me yesterday. I was really impressed with him, and he's one of them sort of no nonsense centre halves that just kind of gets the job done, isn't he? And he I can't remember. I mean, too many games where he's had howlers, if I'm being completely honest. But he does enough each week, and yesterday he did enough, and we kept a clean sheet with him at the back, and I was really impressed with him, and I was just glad that he came back in and he put a good shift in at home.
I think he's quite a calming presence to have at the back because either side of him, you've got two absolute lunatics, and in a good way, I suppose. Pollock, he's very passionate, and he just wants to smash through people and everything else. And hopefully, his injury isn't too bad because it looked quite a nasty one. And
Yeah, it did,
at the
didn't
end,
it?
I stayed at the end a bit when they were walking around to clap him off, and the ice pack he had was huge on it. So fingers crossed it's not too bad, and we see him in the starting lineup for Saturday. But yeah, he can be quite sort of erratic at times and Porteous. I mean, don't really need to go into how he is at times, but I think Sierra has that sort of calming presence about him, and he organises the defence as well. And he really impressed me yesterday because although I said that about him at the start of the season, I didn't want it to be true because I love Sierra. I think he's been a great servant for the club, and it was quite clear that the step up to the Premier League was quite tough for him and it was quite demanding. So it's good to see him back to his best. And
Harsh yellow yesterday, I might add. He did put in
yeah,
a couple of tackles yesterday, but the actual tackle that he got booked for, I was like, not on your Nelly. It was a
no.
bit of a stupid one.
Well, again, that links brilliantly to the player I want to finish last on is Ebosele because he's never a yellow card. I mean, that
Oh
chap that
no,
went down, was it that Saki?
yeah,
Christ alive. When he went down, I was looking up behind. I was like, where is that sniper in the stadium? Because fucking hell. I couldn't believe it. And the referee giving that as a yellow. I mean, it was bad enough that he blew up for the foul, let alone a yellow card. But Ebosele for me yesterday, he obviously won man of the match through the club, I think, and deservedly so. He's another one I probably owe an apology to. I think I said after the Luton game that he's not someone who fills me with joy defensively. I think he was better going forward. But yesterday, he's a complete package, and him and Barr really had that thing going at times yesterday. And he put in a few last-ditch challenges. There are a couple of times where late on they were trying to sort of hit us on the counter a bit, and he broke up play down that flank, and he really, really made it difficult for anyone coming up against him. So, I'm not saying he's the finished article, far from it, but he, considering he's an Udinese player, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes that switch permanently, and I'd be very, very welcoming of it. But for
yeah.
me, Joe, deserved man of the match yesterday.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was really impressed with him yesterday. Like you say, he looks a complete package. He was great going forward. He was good defensively. Great challenges towards the end of the game when they were looking to break down that left hand side, and he put in two brilliant tackles in succession. I think there was one he put the tackle in, then he got up and he put one in straight after. And yeah, overall, I thought his game was great yesterday. He just he's another one. As time goes on, he's just going to get better in this league, and I think this league suits him. I think I watched his interview yesterday, and he said that Serie A didn't. Well, basically, the comments he made said that the Championship suits his style of play a lot better, and you can see that from what he's doing with us. And Derby fans said it when he left. They said that he's fantastic, and he's doing pretty much what I was reading in the comments from them when we signed him. So yeah, very impressed with him, and yeah. I do feel a bit sorry for Andrews in a way, but we need stability, and I think he brings that level of stability down that right hand side for me.
Yeah, and do you know what? I wasn't completely against the change that Clev's made. He brought Andrews on for Bar, didn't he? So Andrews was was sort of more attacking. He certainly wasn't the wing back. He was sort of, right, you go and have a go at him and play more attacking. And I think Ishmael did that a couple of times. Like when he played him, obviously, there was all that fallout. But
Yeah.
I'm not against seeing Andrews in a more attacking position again this season, because we know that he'll cut in and shoot because he's got a couple of goals doing so, and he's not afraid to shoot. So, yeah, I think Ebosele going forwards, he's cemented his place at right back for me, or right wing back for me. And like you said, the Derby fans said, what a good player we were getting. I remember speaking to the Rams Review podcast, doing the lowdown, and yeah, they were full of praise for him, and he's electric pace as well. Because a couple of times we played, those diags or a long ball up, and you thought, nah, there's no way he's getting that. Like, what a waste! And then he goes and gets it and keeps it in, and yeah, very, very impressed with Ebosele yesterday. So I hope that he's one that is continuously in the team from now on. I should have said, actually, it's not going to slot in very well. I'm not even going to try and make it slot in very well. After we were talking about the penalty, Edo Kayembe, that means that only Borja Sainz, who the Norwich player who actually scored again today, I think he got
Twice today.
He's overperforming his XG. He's the only player that Sainz overperforming his XG more than Edo Kayembe in the Championship this season. So Kayembe is doing very, very well. But a 1-0 win for Watford yesterday, back to winning ways at the Vic. Another win at Vicarage Road, another clean sheet. The first clean sheet since, was it Stoke in the league? I think it was. Because Middlesbrough was 2-1.
Sunderland was 2-1.
Sunderland was 2-1.
Yeah, probably would have been the first, because Coventry was 1-1.
Yeah.
So yeah, the end of August would have been the last clean sheet in the league. But yeah, that's as it's been pointed out, 23 points from 30 under Clevs at Vicarage Road, as well as the 2 League Cup victories as well. So that's 12 games at Vicarage Road under Clevs without defeat, which is pretty good going.
Yeah, and I'll stand by what I've said before. Up against anyone in the league at home, I feel a lot more confident. It's the away games we need to sort out. Just a couple of other sort of housekeeping bits, if you like, just to finish the podcast on, because I'm a bit wary of the time. By Friday, the 1st of November, which is this Friday coming, the TV fixtures will be announced, and that will run up until the first weekend of March. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter for that. Hopefully a few more TV. Well, I say hopefully. These 12:30 kickoffs are killing me. They proper knock me out my stride for the day. Like, I mean, granted, I got back at 6 o'clock on Saturday because I had to drop Dan back in Nottingham, and then I drove back up to Lincoln. But if I was going straight back to Lincoln, it really would have knocked me out of sorts. So, yeah, 1st of November, keep your eyes peeled for that. Fixtures up until March. Miles Roberts, goalkeeper, out on loan at Partick Thistle. He got his 5th clean sheet of the season. I must actually use this time to shout out. We have a chap called Ethan, who is a Partick Thistle fan. He found us on Instagram, and he messages us every time that Miles Roberts has a good game. And it seems to be every week at the moment. And they're loving him up there. I think they beat Queen of the South. Queen's Park, the one that plays at Hampden, basically.
Queen's Park, yeah.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, they won 1-0. So that would have been a great experience for him as well, to play at Hampden in such a big stadium and to keep a clean sheet. So well done to Miles Roberts. Could we see him involved next season, or maybe time for an EFL loan next season? Something, sadly, I had to report, I have to report, it come to our attention on Twitter, and a lot of people have probably seen it, that unfortunately, the ex-Watford striker Shaq Ford was subject to racial abuse on Instagram after Bristol Rovers game at Reading, which I think they lost 1-0.
He was sent off.
Was it?
He was sent off, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Not fucking hell, not that that makes it okay or anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I didn't know he was sent off. But he unfortunately received a message on Instagram. I should have got the chap's name actually because we need to sort of.
Oliver Heath, I think his name was, or something, wasn't
There
it?
you go. We need to make him famous for all the wrong reasons, and I thought so with Shaq obviously, and hope that the perpetrator's dealt with appropriately, and I'm sure he will be. And Shaq's not
Seems
the only one recently which has sort of been
no, it's
subject to this
disgraceful.
abhorrent behaviour. So it's I don't know why people do it because who did who was it recently?
Adebayo for Luton. I mean, obviously, I know there are neighbours, but football's football, and bringing personal and people's colour of skin and things into things is completely and utterly unacceptable. And I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised that it's creeping back in again because it kind of went a little bit quiet. I don't know whether that was because things were being done behind the scenes, where people were being caught out and it wasn't mentioned, but it is creeping back in. Like I say, regardless of who he plays for, I wouldn't want anybody to receive racial abuse of that nature. And we're with all of them. And like you said, we kind of stand together, don't we? And hope these people get kicked out of football.
Absolutely, I think it's happened twice in 2 games for Adebayo at Luton as well. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go off on a rant now because now's not the time, and there's so many other things. But there was an incident recently where there was a Sheffield Wednesday fan, or there was a West Brom fan that was saying something, or a Sheffield Wednesday fan about
No, there was there
that
was
passed away.
oh, okay. I was going to say there was something at Portsmouth as well recently where someone was racially abusive towards somebody, and they've
Mm.
managed to locate that person. Obviously, they weren't able to find them at the time, but I think a lot of people were pleased for appeals and stuff to come
Mm.
forward, and they managed to find the person. But people are just getting brave again at football and on social media, and it's uncalled for, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's basically what happened to this fan. They found him, found where he worked, found his LinkedIn, and I believe his family have not stuck with him. He's lost his job, and he's potentially looking at prison time. So, yeah, it's stupid, and the fact that it's still going on in this day and age is it's disgraceful, to be quite honest. But yeah, it's Sheffield Wednesday up next, up for Watford actually. 2 away games on a bounce, and then Oxford at home, and then we've got another international break. Clevs wants us back in the top 6 by the international break. We are currently 7th, and I think we're only outside the top 6 on goal difference. So 2 away games. I'll say tough away games because away games are generally tough for Watford. So hopefully 3 points for the Horns on Saturday at Hillsborough. I won't be going. Joe, are you going?
No, mate. No, I'm not doing either of these. I am doing a few games in November, but not these two. It's worth mentioning. I think Sheffield Wednesday next week's the only game out of all the league games in November that's not on Sky. All the rest are on Sky, so plenty of TV games coming up for us.
There we go. I didn't know that. I was going to do Sheffield Wednesday, but not paying 36 quid for a ticket. No way. And then Swansea away, did that last season, and yeah, I don't want to try and beat the euphoria from last season because that was amazing last season. Then Oxford at home. I think somebody pointed out that up until the new year, I think it is, that we don't have another 3 o'clock home game. I don't know
No,
if
well,
it's
I think I'm a little bit concerned because if those with the games that we've got at home, I believe Sheffield United and Norwich are our current 2 home games for January and February, 3 o'clock on Saturday. They're usually ones that are moved for TV, and if they do both get moved, then we will only our next Saturday 3 o'clock. Obviously, Pompey Boxing Day is at 3 o'clock, but our next Saturday 3 o'clock will be Millwall on the 8th of March.
that's absolutely bonkers. If that,
So I'm praying that Sheffield United doesn't, because Norwich is always moved. I think 13 out of the last 15 against Norwich have been on telly. So that's always moved. But yeah, I'm hoping that they keep Sheffield United, because if they're both moved, March the 8th will be the next Saturday, 3 o'clock.
Well, if anyone from Sky is watching, please don't subject us to that, and hook our podcast up, please. Be decent, good numbers, but yeah, no. On that bombshell, we'll end it there. Thank you very, very much for watching tonight. If you've watched live along with us and commented, or if you're watching this back, thank you for watching. Hit that like button at the bottom. Also, hit that subscribe button. We're on 581 now. We've got just under 2 months. Just under 2 months. I want to get 600. So 19 more subscribers in 2 months' time. Piece of piece. Show me it's a piece of piece. 600, that'd be great. We've got, talking of Christmas, thanks to Joe, we have got a Voices of the Vic Christmas meetup in the diary as well. So if you want to tag along to that, drop us a message, let us know, and I'm sure we'll be welcome with open arms. But thank you very much for watching tonight, and yeah, we'll be back probably on Sunday to talk about the Sheffield Wednesday game. And take care, everyone, and good night. Come on, you Orns.